Chapter 45-32. The field of view changes rapidly. When Jian Wushuang saw the situation in front of him, he was already in the middle of a fairy island, white misty fairy island, with rows of sharp-billed, red-top, white-feathered cranes, like elegant fairies, walking leisurely. Footsteps on the beach. Startled by the fish in the sea, they suddenly spread their wings and flew up, marking white trails in the air, showing their beauty. Taking a breath, even the divine power became full. The sword unparalleled fell in front of a bamboo house. Outside the bamboo house, the sun and the news, the sea breeze is slightly warm. On both sides of a chessboard, there are two jade plates filled with black and white chess pieces. Feng Tian's ancestor sat on the side of black chess, and saw Jian Wushuang looking at the admiration of this island, and he couldn't help but say a little smug, "Junior, my husband asks you, my husband's island is okay? My husband told you that every mortal who has spent hundreds of years on the island of the old man can be transformed into an immortal, and the supreme is here. It is also able to speed up the practice 10 times. Compared with the so-called blissful places in the so-called top forces of the universe, amazing." As he said, his ancestor Feng Tian smiled as he stroked his beard. However, the first sentence that Jian Wushuang spoke instantly made the smile on his face freeze. "I just sigh, the universe is almost dying out, and the predecessors still have their minds here to relax and take it easy." Hearing this, Feng Tian's ancestor quickly flashed a look of shame on his face, staring with a beard and staring, "Boy, what else would you do besides using the righteousness of the universe to crush the old man?" Hearing this, Jian Wushuang couldn't help but stupefy, and the young boy on the side also covered his mouth and smiled a little. Stop talking. Come and play chess with my husband." Feng Tian's ancestor impatiently hooked at sword Wushuang. "It is good." Jian Wushuang nodded his head and sat cross-legged opposite Feng Tian's ancestor. "Respect the old and love the young, the old man first." Feng Tian's ancestor held the black finger and landed first on the chessboard. I saw that one finger fell, and the middle of the chessboard was in the center, but the position of Tianyuan. After setting his fingers, Feng Tian's ancestor looked up at Jian Wushuang, and his mouth aroused his elation. He said, "The old man's trick is to settle the situation directly. At the center of the chessboard, he will directly reach the sword stopped your throat. Junior, how do you see me fighting?" Hearing this, the little boy could not help laughing again. The master is moving out of his theory again. Pointing at Tianyuan seems to be awesome, but it is actually the best way to start. Someone who knows a little about chess can tell from his finger that the master is a chicken. Thinking of this, Xiao Dao Tong hoped to look at Xiong Jian Wushuang. To be honest, he hopes that the sword is unparalleled. He is different from Feng Tian's ancestors. Feng Tian's ancestors hold themselves back and lock themselves in this small Nanchuan Xiandao. It is because they have a holiday with the of the universe. Liang Zi, Erlai, can also be regarded as being angry with himself. But young children do not have this mentality. Just when he thought that Jian Wushuang would immediately destroy Feng Tian's ancestors in the form of smashing the sword, Xiao Daotong's expression was stagnant. I saw Jian Wushuang staring at the chess game with a grimace on his face, with a frown on his face, a serious and thoughtful look. Next moment, seeing Jian Wushuang's solemn preparations, he said solemnly, "The predecessors' chess skills are superb, and they have reached a state of infatuation. I'm afraid that they have reached the top in Go. This is a very bad move. However, the younger generation also has a coping style." Snapped. I saw Jian Wushuang lifted his white finger and landed on the bottom left corner of the board. The predecessors pointed at the central Tianyuan is fierce, but if the younger people hold on to the 4 corners, and then slowly figure it out, they will be surrounded by layers, and they will definitely form a posture of catching in the air. The trail boy stunned. "What is this? What a catch. I see how the old man killed the quartet and broke the boat." I saw Feng Tian's ancestor's eyes flashed, murderous, and dropped his finger again, also falling in the lower right corner of one of the 4 sharp corners. "Junior, you have Zhongliangji, I have a wall ladder, and now I have guarded a retreat. How do you think you fight the old husband?" Feng Tian's ancestor touched his smile, said inexorably deep and inexhaustible, and could not finish talking. Watch me attack again." Jian Wushuang was another finger, and fell into one of the four corners. Xiao Dao Tong stood on the side, seeing the falling fingers as rain. You came to me, with the murderous Jian Wushuang and Feng Tian ancestor in his eyes. He finally confirmed a little. This grandma has 2 chickens. If it weren't for the little boy who was proficient in Go, he would have been deceived into seeing the 2 men vowed eloquently and full of reasonable words. These 2 dishes are fine, but they are so reasonable, I almost believed. The little boy muttered to himself, inexplicably desperate. Really? After a while. Ha 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 ha, Junior, you lost. Feng Tian's ancestors slammed the chessboard, causing the chessboard pieces to tremble violently. Happy. Younger, you are the old man who is in love with this game of chess, the first person to win in thousands of years. Ha ha ha. Feng Tian's ancestor laughed wildly. The sword is unparalleled, but his face is blue and white. He didn't expect that his own organs calculated that in the end he was still a move away from chess. He was taken by the ancestor of Feng Tian to block the last hole. Xiao Dao Tong smiled bitterly. What did he see? Obviously, it is a super chess game that relies on deductive calculations. In the hands of Jian Wushuang and Feng Tian's ancestors, it has become a rough hole to see who will fill the gap in chess first. Really a little spicy eyes. Jian Wushuang stood up and sighed silently. If he loses, he loses. He is not a loser. In this case, the only thing to do is to retreat first, and let the Jew find a way to get it in person. However, this ancestor is not bad by nature. No matter how you are, you still have to persuade the Jew to find a way to retain this ancestor. Thinking of this, Jian Wushuang arched his hand towards Feng Tian's ancestor and said, "Seniors, juniors leave." After that, Jian Wushuang set up Jian Guang and was ready to go. Laughing loudly, shouting, happy, immersed in the joy of great victory, the ancestor Feng Tian could not help but witness. He asked Jian Wushuang to play chess because he knew that his chess skills were bad and he had never won. He wanted to use this to lend Feng Tianqi to Jian Wushuang. In this way, he also saved his face and stepped down. Lend Feng Tianqi. But Jian Wushuang is going to leave. Isn't he planning to trade for nothing? I really don't know if you junior is not upset, or my husband. I have made great strides in chess recently. It's really amazing. Alas, confidants are hard to find and loneliness is like snow. There was a silent sigh in his heart, and immediately, Feng Tian's ancestor looked up at the back of Jian Wushuang preparing to leave, and burst into a drink. Slow. Chapter 45-33. Slow. Slammed and exploded in Nanchuan Xiandao. I saw Feng Tian's ancestor glaring with anger and a wave of his hand, and innumerable spells poured out, forming a huge mask, like an invisible glass, blocking the figure that swordsman was preparing to leave. Senior Feng Tian, what else do you want? Jian Wushuang stopped and looked back, looking helplessly towards Feng Tian's ancestor. Chess also lost, and Feng Tian's ancestor should be proud of himself. Suddenly what did he want to stop him from doing? Doesn't he want to humiliate him? Junior, do you want to come here, Nanxian Island, old man? Feng Tian's ancestor gave Jian Wushuang a glance, and Lungheng said. Upon hearing this, Jian Wushuang's pupils could not help shrinking. Couldn't Feng Tian ancestor change his face? When Jian Wushuang quietly grasped the Tai Luo divine sword and was ready to surprise him, when he broke the array into the far distance, I saw Feng Tian's ancestor agitating with a large sleeve and waving coldly. Junior, do you want to leave this sky banner today? Hearing this, Jian Wushuang first stunned, and then exulted on his face. Thank you, Senior Feng Tian. Today, if you borrow the grace of Feng Tianqi, the whole universe will be impressed within 5 days and grateful. After that, Jian Wushuang stepped out and fell in front of Feng Tian's ancestor. At the same time, Jian Wushuang felt silently in his heart. It's no wonder that the God of Heaven said that Feng Tian's ancestors were strange in character. Now it seems that this is really true. This change of face is faster than turning the book. Immaculate. Immaculate. Jian Wushuang shook his head in his heart. Don't rush to thank me first. The old man can lend Feng Tianqi to you, but the old man needs conditions. Feng Tian's ancestor once again glanced at Jian Wushuang and said. In this regard, Jian Wushuang nodded and did not refute. Feng Tianqi is one of the 7 ancestors of Qi Dao. It is extremely powerful. There is no match in the world, and Jian Wushuang does not expect empty-handedness to seal the banner. The ultimate ancestors represent the most extreme force in the world. The Taro Excalibur represents the ultimate killing power, the Wu Ding Chao Ding represents the most extreme creative power, and this sky banner represents the most extreme seal suppression force. Senior, but it doesn't matter. Jian Wushuang arched his hand and said, "It is good." Feng Tian's ancestor took a deep breath, and his expression became solemn and serious for the first time. He stretched out a finger and pointed at the Taro Excalibur hanging from the swordless pair of waists, and said, "Junior, Feng Tianqi is the ancestor of the Dao Dao. If you want to borrow Feng Tianqi from the old husband, you can also exchange it with one of the same ancestors of the same Dao. If the old man did not admit it wrong, you have this handle on your waist. Saber is the killing sword that represents the killing among the patriarchs." After speaking, he stared at the sword unparalleled. This is a transaction and a test. He wanted to see Jian Wushuang, is it true as he said before on the South China Sea, willing to give everything for the universe? After hearing this, Jian Wushuang was silent. It can be said that he is now able to fight across the border. In addition to his extremely powerful magical powers and sword skills, half of the reasons are from the Taro Excalibur, which has given him the terrifying power. If the Tai Luo divine sword is surrendered, the sword's unparalleled combat power will be greatly reduced. If it is normal, it would be okay. Now that the catastrophe is about to start, he wants to go to battle to kill the enemy. After a long silence, "Senior Feng Tian, sorry, I can't." The sword took a deep breath, and she sank openly. Hearing this, Feng Tian's ancestors were stunned, and then sneered in his heart. He, what is universal and what is willing to die for the universe? But it's just nice to speak, standing back does not hurt. Once it's about your own interests, you're in shape. Thinking of this, Feng Tian's ancestor frowned, and when he was about to let Jian Wushuang leave, he heard Jian Wushuang continue to say, "Senior Feng Tian, Tai Luo Excalibur is my weapon. A swordsman, if there is no sword in his hand, how can he use his residual heat? If the predecessor you want the Taro Excalibur, the younger can promise you, and after the war of catastrophe is over, I can give you the Taro Excalibur. As for your predecessor, you said that you want that ancestor to exchange." Wow! Jian Wushuang turned over with his right hand, and a bronze small tripod covered with quaint grains fell into Jian Wushuang's hands. "Senior, what do you think of the younger generation? Wu Yi Chao Ding." Suddenly, Feng Tian's ancestor was shocked. The Wu Ding Chao Ding can be said to be the most precious one among the 7-handed ancestors, because Wu Xing Chao Ding stands for creation. Killing and destroying is simple, but creating is difficult. One of the most critical factors in wanting to take the step to the of the universe is to understand creation. How can you have the Wu Ding Chao Ding? Feng Tian's ancestors skyrocketed in his eyes, and his voice was a little trembling. "The senior doesn't need to care where my chaotic tripod comes from, the senior just needs to tell me if I can change the sky banner with you," Jian Wushuang said lightly. Feng Tian's ancestor heard the words, took a deep look at Jian Wushuang, and said, "It looks like it's incomplete, right? But even so, it's enough to exchange the flag with the old man." Speaking of which, Feng Tian's old prince paused. Shunsheng said, "Boy, the old man does not take advantage of you. To tell you the truth, this chaos is the key factor to break through the last step, but your current state is temporarily unavailable. You are in the hands of a violent creature. Therefore, the old man promised you that after the end of this catastrophe, this chaotic warrior will be returned to you, and even Feng Tianqi will be presented to you as a gift." "How?" After saying that, Feng Tian's ancestor turned his right hand, and a small black flag appeared in Feng Tian's ancestor's hand. He took the lead in pushing Feng Tianqi to Jian Wushuang. "It is good." Jian Wushuang nodded. "You can't shu www.ucanshu.com as the ancestor of Feng Tian said, although this Wu Ding Chaos tripod is good, it is currently of little use to him. On the contrary, Feng Tianqi is currently his most urgent need. After taking over Feng Tianqi, Jian Wushuang pushed it with his right hand, and handed over Wu Chaos Ding to Feng Tian's ancestor. Predecessor Feng Tian, now that the catastrophe is about to happen, and the younger generation still has everything to do, so I don't want to stay anymore and leave. Jian Wushuang arched his hand towards Feng Shen's ancestor. It is good. Feng Tian's ancestor nodded, knowing that when there are indeed many things today, there are no more swords. Senior Feng Tian, then we will see you tomorrow. Jian Wushuang smiled slightly at Feng Tian's ancestor and Xiao Dao Tong, and immediately stepped into a sharp sword light, like a tidal wave, soared into the sky, disappeared on the Nanchuan Xiandao, leaving only a long white marks. Chapter 45-34, Call Out. Long white marks passed in the air, and the figure of Jian Wushuang gradually turned into a small black spot, completely disappearing into the sky. The already calm sea water washes the beach in waves, bringing countless things like shells, gravel and starfish, reflecting the blue sky. Feng Tian's ancestor took the Wu Ding Chaos tripod and stood with his hands in his hands. He stared at the sky dully, and never returned to God for a long time. Behind him, the young boy looked down and said nothing. Juvenile, do you say that you have done wrong for your teacher for so many years? Feng Tian's ancestor said suddenly. He couldn't hear any emotion in his tone, but gave a vague feeling. Xiao Dao Tong heard the words and couldn't help but hesitated. He actually knows that his master has always been a very kind person. If he is an ordinary person, he has been snatched from others for promotion opportunities. However, his master did not do so, and he never thought of how to avenge the gods in the past. Master, why do you think so? Xiao Dao Tong asked. Feng Tian's ancestor heard the words, his mouth slightly bitter, and said, in fact, in the last cataclysmic battle, if our teachers were going to die, we wouldn't die so many people in the universe. Xiao Dao Tong heard the words, still a little dazed. However, he knew that by virtue of his master's power, if he really shot, let alone the divine power universe would not die so many people, it would not be impossible to reverse the situation. You know, your master, but people who come from the same era as the of the universe, was the one who stabilized the of the year. Even now, after the of the reaches that unspeakable realm, his master is more than God, there is only one level of strength. Forget it, naive, tell you don't understand. Feng Tian's ancestor shook his head, and immediately pursed his lips instead of talking. Only he knows that he has trapped himself on Nanliao Island for so many years, but he has given up on himself and he is unwilling to face reality. Suddenly, Feng Tian's ancestor exhaled a sigh of relief, looked back to the little boy who knew his shoulders were high, and said with a smile, Juvenile, how many years have you been a teacher? Xiaodarotong heard the words stunned, although he didn't understand why his master suddenly asked this, but also felt that his master was a little weird today. But he still obediently pointed his fingers and calculated seriously, Master, it has been 1,000,000 years since you picked me up by the sea. 1,000,000 years, you have been a teacher for millions of years on this island. Feng Tian's ancestor sighed, his words turned again, and suddenly said softly a word that made Xiaodarotong look dull. Juvenile, do you want to go out and have a look? What the teacher said was to see the real vast galaxy, Wuxing Xinghai, and see the real world. I. The young boy opened his eyes in black and white, and became a little short of breath. After he was picked up from the beach by his ancestor Feng Feng, he never left this place. At the beginning, he would also play in the mortal kingdom, make friends, and make fun and laugh together. But it didn't take long for him to discover that mortals were born old, sick, and dead, and had twilight. When he closed it once, and went to find his former companions happily, those companions had already become their ancestors' graves, and the tombs were 3 feet high. The life of a mortal may be just a time for him to meditate. Over time, he will no longer go to play in the mortal kingdom, otherwise once life and death leave, he will only increase his sadness and sadness. It can be said that during his 1,000,000 years, he spent almost all of his time on Nanxian Xiandao with his ancestor Feng Tian. He could not wait any longer, and wanted to see the wonderful universe in Master's mouth, and wanted to see the splendid sea of stars. But he didn't want to raise it and make his teacher embarrassed. He knew that on the surface, he seemed to be careless, as if he didn't care about everything. He played a particularly stinky master, and deep down, there was always a knot. I think. After hesitating for a long time, the little boy took a deep breath and said these two words firmly. After he had finished speaking, he thought his master would give him a stern glance, and then blamed and reprimanded him, so he lowered his head and didn't dare to look at master's face. However, what he waited for was a laugh that master had never had before. Okay, sir, that teacher will take you to see what the universe really looks like. Feng Tian's ancestor laughed heartily, laughed freely, and never laughed as he pleased. I saw in his eyes that the light was skyrocketing, and an extremely terrifying hegemony emanated from him. On this day, the ancestor of Feng Tian found the true ancestor of Feng Tian who was frozen in his heart. He is the first person under thee of the universe. Juvenile, since you are going to the outside world, you can't wear this dress. The outside girls are not dressed like you. Feng Tian's ancestor waved his right hand, and a set of purple-fringed tulle skirt appeared in his hand. Go and change this dress. What? After hearing the words, Xiao Dao Tong stayed in a daze, took the long skirt of Feng Tian's ancestors, then trot all the way, and ran into the bamboo house of Nanshuan Xiandao. After a while, a tall girl with a perfect figure in a long skirt, nervously grasping the skirt with her hands, walked out of the bamboo house timidly. Her bright eyes are bright, white as snow, and her clear eyes are like clear water. The afterglow of the setting sun shone on her face, showing a huge swath of red. Her facial features are exquisite, her face crooked and her jaw sharp. There are many beauties in the universe, either cold or enchanting or cold, but in her body, there are things that most women do not have. That is, clean. The words clean are simple, but they are the rarest. Master, I am a bit uncomfortable, so let's change back to that robe. The naive pinched her clothes, lowered her head, and said weakly. I don't know why, she felt her heart beating and her palms sweating. Fool, don't change it. Feng Tian's ancestor gave him a naive look, and said in a threatening tone. He sighed in his heart. This trip left Nanshuan Xiandao, only he knew what he was going to do. After taking her through the universe, he will also go and do something for this universe. The answer to Feng Tian's ancestor's mind is unknown. Juveniles don't know that this long skirt is the ancestor of Feng Tian who consumed all his treasures and trained the strong defense of Xianxian. In terms of value, I am afraid that it is no longer under the ancestors. This is Feng Tian's ancestor, using his life's heritage, tailor-made gifts for the naive. You son, if the master is gone in the future, I will rely on this fairy to protect you. Feng Tian's ancestor said silently in his heart, but he raised his head and reached out his hand, playing a brain crash on the naive forehead, with a somewhat vicious tone. Fool, if you let the teacher know that you dare to change this dress and pick your skin for the teacher. Okay, master, what are you doing so fiercely? The naive rubbed the place where his head was bombarded, and grumbled with dissatisfaction. The ancestor of Feng Tian snorted and didn't speak anymore, but looked down at the land under his feet, and his eyes were replaced by a touch of memory. Old man, you have been here with my husband for so many years. I must have been bored for a long time. Alas. Feng Tian's ancestor murmured a laugh and immediately stepped on his right foot. Boom. Suddenly, the entire Nanshuan Xiandao shuddered violently, and the sea water around it was like boiling water boiling continuously. Boom boom. Numerous lands are cracking, and numerous sea waters are boiling, as if at the feet of Feng Tian's ancestor, there is a wild beast awakening. Next moment, a terrifying roar exploded. The entire Nanshuan Xiandao flew up into the air, making a dull humming sound. Looking from a distance, a black basalt tortoise that is pressing across the sea emerges from the deep sea. Master, this? There was a horror in the eyes of the naive, and I saw at my feet, where is Nanxian Xiandao, clearly a huge basalt giant turtle. Its limbs are almost like 4 Ding Haitian needles, the pillars of Optimus, and she lived 1,000,000 years in Nanshuan Xiandao, just a carapace on the back of this giant turtle. The turbulent sea breeze blew white hair on both sides of Feng Tian's ancestor's cheeks, however, the smile on Feng Tian's ancestor's mouth became more and more abundant. The old man of the gods, the old man is out. It's time to settle accounts with you. Well, yes, the cosmic aliens. We have to solve the cosmic aliens first. Let me put this old man's account first, and first blast this group of debris out of our universe. On this day, in the endless territory of Nanjiao Starfield, countless mortals raised their heads and saw a giant tortoise covering the sky, leaving the sky. Hundreds of millions of souls, all kneeling to the ground, staring wildly at the heaven-going giant tortoise, shouting in unison to the fairy. On this day, there is no longer the legend of the old immortal master in the Nanchuan star domain. This day, a strange combination was added to the universe. A whole body is dark, a giant tortoise the size of a star. A pair of rotten old men and refined purple skirt girls traveling through the universe. Strange combination. In the starry sky of Woody, there was a girl-less excited and novel wow shout, and an old man whispered with his beard and squinting his eyes. Well, the old man forgot to ask, what's the name of the boy who played chess with the old man, and I don't know if the boy has become a gang, and the young girl should be entrusted to him. Shaking his head, the strange pair disappeared into the vast sky. And in the more distant starry sky, with a black robe, Jian Wushuang, with a cold face, had already blasted away towards the outer battlefield. Chapter 45-35. In the vast universe of stars, Jian Wushuang stepped on the light and rushed towards the battlefield outside the territory. Soon, with the outbreak of Jian Wushuang's full strength, the base camp arrived. Obviously, the sword left the base camp for only a few months without both parties, but the entire base camp was full of Xiao Se's low breath, and everyone had a heavy look on his face. When Jian Wushuang saw this, he could not help frowning. In the past few months when he left the road, what happened? Taking a deep breath, Jian Wushuang strode into the temple of the gods. Today's sword is unparalleled, except for the two disciples under the seat of the cosmic god, the only person who can freely enter and exit the cosmic hall. Jian Wushuang, you are back. Wushan Chaojian nodded his head. He was still like Jian Wushuang when he first saw him, gentle and kind, with a smile on his face, but Jian Wushuang saw a deep tiredness on his face. Jian Wushuang, what's the situation? That Fengtian ancestor lent you Fengtian banner? Energizing, Jinju asked. It's a shame. Jian Wushuang nodded his head, flipped his right hand, and drew a small black flag, which suddenly appeared in his hand. It is good. Seeing this, the light of God suddenly rose sharply in the eyes of Ju God, a rare sigh of relief in his heart. With this sky banner in place, he had some confidence in this catastrophe. After a moment of groaning, the Jew said, Jian Wushuang, there is bad news for you. Without selling a prince, God of the Eurasian immediately said, in the past 2 months, there have been virtual vagrants in the virtual universe. They have emerged from the void cracks and come to inquire about their strength. In just 1 month, nearly 10 in the battle, our friction with the cracks in the void has become more and more. The old man guessed that the war of catastrophe may break out at any time. What? So fast? Jian Wushuang heard a shock. Even though he was ready to deal with the Holocaust in his heart, when the battle of the Holocaust really came, he felt a little hesitant. Therefore, sword is unparalleled, please trouble now to rush back to the virtual universe and wait for the husband's command. Once the war of catastrophe really begins, when the core force of the virtual universe invades our universe, the old man will give you an order. At that time, you will use the Fengtian banner to place a blockade in their void forbidden area and cut off their rear path. Zeus said with a serious expression. Yes. Jian Wushuang nodded when he heard the words, and there was a dignity on his face. The magnetic fields and laws between the two universes are not interlinked, which is equivalent to saying that after the people of the virtual universe have invaded the divine universe, they consume the virtual power and will not be supplied. In the usual catastrophe battles, the reason why the virtual soldiers of the virtual universe are difficult to entangle is because once they are defeated or consumed excessively, they will return to the virtual universe to resupply, and then attack again. Once Jian Wushuang was placed in the void crack in the void forbidden field, the sky banner was laid, and the 87th void crack was blocked, they could cut off their path, and divert the dummy in the void universe. At that time, under the leadership of the universe, even the use of water to grind time will be able to wipe it out, and then kill it in one fell swoop. The virtual universe, whether it is individual strength or overall strength, is stronger than the divine universe. In this case, The magical universe needs to reverse the victory and defeat, and this is the best countermeasure. The sword unparalleled, it has played a top role. I immediately rushed back to the virtual universe to set up. Taking a deep breath, Jian Wushuang strode out of the temple hall. When I walked to the door of the Colossus Hall, Jian Wushuang seemed to think of something. He tore his right hand and tore off a corner of the garment. He used his hand as a pen and wrote a few dense lines. Master Jew God, if I can't come back alive this time, please help me to transfer this cloth to my wife as cold as frost. Jian Wushuang took a deep breath, flicked his fingers, and this piece of cloth immediately fell into the hands of the of heaven. God heard the words, could not help but stunned. He wanted to say something, relieved a few words, but finally sighed, just nodded and answered. If Jian Wushuang wanted to cut off the back of the void universe, then he had to go deep into the void forbidden ground, and the hope of surviving was simply slim. Jian Wushuang understands this, and God of the Earth also understands this. After leaving the base camp, Jian Wushuang was alone and set off again, rushing to the void crack. This time back to the virtual universe, the Ram Supreme did not go, but stayed in the divine universe, waiting for a force after the outbreak of the war. Jian Wushuang will be alone, deep into the virtual universe, and start another kind of battle. Came to the extraterritorial battlefield. The 6th and 7th teams are now responsible for defending the battlefield. The two captains seem to have been informed by the God of the Gods, and did not ask more about Jian Wushuang's going to the virtual universe, but only instructed Jian Wushuang to be careful. At this moment in the extraterrestrial battlefield, there is a war in progress, so Jian Wushuang did not rush into the void crack, but waited for the battle to end. A small human-faced spider crawled out from the cracks in the void, densely packed with the entire sky. Fortunately, although there are many human-faced spiders, their individual strength is not strong, and the strongest is nothing but the ultimate dominating realm. Therefore, these members of the 6th and 7th teams, it is quite easy to deal with. According to Supreme He Yuan, these human-faced spiders are not intelligent bodies. They should be made by some power in the virtual universe, in order to observe and test the strength of the divine universe. A moment later, the battle for unilateral slaughter came to an end. A human-faced spider the size of a small hill fell in the air like a rain, and the cosmic starry sky was full of human limb spiders' broken limbs and broken blood. The battle is over, and naturally it is time for Jian Wushuang to leave. He Yuan Extreme looked at Jian Wushuang, his eyes were a little complicated. The junior, who had just entered the Supreme, once again met, and already carried the heavy responsibility of life and death in the universe. Sword unparalleled, this seat is waiting for you to return safely. He Yuan Supreme said in a deep voice. Jian Wushuang nodded with a smile and returned 2 words. For sure. Then Jian Wushuang did not hesitate, and stepped into the void crack. The black robe figure of Jian Wushuang was gradually swallowed by a crack like a black hole. No one has ever noticed. One had already died, leaving only the skull of the human face with a faint red glow in his eyes. The figure of Jian Wushuang stepping into the void crack instantly formed a picture in his compound eyes. At the same time, in the void universe, the void forbidden ground, in a cave in the 87th crack. An ancient figure, like a sculpture, covered with mud, sitting cross-legged deep in the cave, slowly opened his eyes. Huh! Someone entered the virtual universe. Chapter 45-36. The Void Universe, the Forbidden Land of Void, has a deep cave at the 87th crack. The hole was covered with cobwebs, and a single spider ran along the cobweb and climbed on the wall, continuously spitting silver-thick silk hair from the mouth, flashing cold light. And in the middle of the cave, a mud sculpture suddenly jittered. Immediately, countless dirt cracked and fell, raising countless dust, exposing a monster old man with veins on his face and a spider-like body all over his body. Who is this? The monster old man slowly opened his eyes, and a faint light flashed from his eyes. Just a moment ago, he saw a picture when he made countless gadgets and died. In the picture, a young man with a black robe and a cold face stepped into the void crack. This matter needs to be reported to Lord Shushan. The monster old man shook his head and immediately stood up. Suddenly, Countless spiders clinging to the wall, all along the cobweb, crawled towards this monster old man. Alas! Suddenly, all these spiders crashed into the monster's body. And the monster old man, who had a pale face, flashed a sick redness on his face. Call out! As soon as he stepped on his foot, his body flickered, and he disappeared instantly into the deep pit. The 87th crack. A huge building like a honeycomb was built here, filled with dense wormholes. The monster old man's figure just flashed, and instantly appeared in the hive-like building, the middle wormhole. Strode in. 34 false honors, as well as right and left false envoys, were in the hall. 34 virtual honors, each of which is a 6-mark virtual honor repair, is also the main force of this catastrophe. Among them, many of them are old monsters who have survived the last catastrophe, while others are the masters of ancient holy places, immortal Taoist masters, and so on. The last emperor of the refining god, Bahuang Xuanzuan, is also here, but his position is extremely close to the bottom. And that left and right vein, the right vein, is a white-haired burly old man who once had a side with Jian Wushuang. On the throne of the main hall, there is a silk-like wrap. Inside the silkworm puppet, there was a constant heartbeat like a thunderous thunder. Seeing this monster old man walk into the hall, 34 vagrants and 2 vagrants sitting on the seats, all made a soft whistle. How could the spider be willing to come up? Well, it must have been in that dark and humid cave for a long time, and I wanted to come up and move around. They laughed and quipped. This spider is weird and superior in strength, and can be regarded as one of the most powerful among them. However, it is lonely by nature and has always been out of group. It usually stays in the dark nest in the heart of the earth. Sky Spider's old man was expressionless and ignored these jokes. Instead, he knelt down on one knee toward the white silkworm who was the first in the hall, and bowed respectfully. Sky Spider, meet Lord Shushan. Alas! A fierce heartbeat sounded from the silkworm pupa. Immediately afterwards, a low, hoarse voice like a man and a woman heard from the silkworm pupae. Sky Spider, what's the matter with you? Master Xing Shun is wise. The Sky Spider old man first flattered, and immediately got up and stood up, and said in a deep voice, Master Huaishu, I just took a Sky Spider larva that was responsible for exploring the news of the divine universe and died on the battlefield outside the divine universe. It was a good discovery before. Oh, good discovery? The 34 virtual lords in the hall all raised a slight brow, allowing the spiders to deliberately come out of the deep pit of the lair to report, I'm afraid it's not just a good discovery. You say it. In the silkworm pupae, a dull sound was made again. Yes. Sky Spider nodded his head strangely and said, Lord, please see. After finishing speaking, Sky Spider made a right-hand stroke, and immediately in the hall, automatically generated a picture. In the extraterrestrial battlefield of the Divine Force universe with rain and broken limbs, a young man wearing a wide black robe, a hood, and a cold and handsome face strode into the void crack. When everyone saw this picture, they all jumped. What? People from the divine universe come in? Well, what's going on? If the divine universe enters our virtual universe, we should immediately be aware of it. Why didn't I sense our 87th crack, and someone came? Why is this? Everyone said in amazement. The silkworm chrysalis was silent. It wasn't until half a while later that the inside of the silkworm puppet made a sound again. Troubleshoot all cracks in the void and capture the man in the divine universe. As soon as this remark came to an end, the crowd was stunned, and then they reacted, and the eyes of suspicion flashed again. Could there be other void cracks in this void-forbidden space that can travel between these two universes? Yes. 34 Vane respected each other in congratulations, and then stood up to act immediately to investigate the void cracks. In the hall, it soon became quiet, leaving only the left and right imagination, and the weird silkworm that kept trembling. 34 Xuanzuan walked out of the hall. No one noticed that the 8 deserted Xuanzuan who walked at the end had a shadow of uncertainty on his face. That guy and Wushuang seemed to be similar. Yahuang Shuzuan narrowed his eyes and said to himself silently. The suspicion that Jian Wushuang had already dissipated suddenly poured into his heart again. Inexplicably, he felt a little disturbed. However, he did not tell this to the Shu, but in his heart, he connected the communication between one of the 5 elders refining Shunzong and elder dust. This person is the deity who stayed in the refining deities, and every time after that, he will report to him the size of the refining deities. It can also be said that this elder dust is of the 8 swords of the Emperor Xuanzang in the refining of the sect of surveillance sword. Dust bone, I ask you, what's wrong with Wushuang recently? After the communication was connected, Yahuang Shuzuan asked in a low voice. Master Uyghur, Wushuang has been retreating in the main hall of the sovereign, and no abnormal situation has been found. Retreat. Bahuang Shuzuan murmured to himself, and immediately said, Dust bone, go to the sovereign hall to see Wushuang immediately and see if he is still in the sovereign hall. What now? Elder Dust bone now. Immediately. Immediately. The cold mang flashed in the eyes of Bahuang Shuzuan. It is good. Suddenly, the sound of elder dust bone leaving was heard in the head of 8 desolates. Hanging up the rumor, Bahuang Shuzuan sneered. If Jian Wushuang really was in the Lord's Hall, then the suspect of Jian Wushuang could be washed away and his doubts about Jian Wushuang could be completely lifted. And if not? In the eyes of Bahuang Shuzuan, the killer flashed by. He wants to let Jian Wushuang taste it, dare to deceive him, and regret being born in this world. He licked his lips, and the bloodthirsty blood surged on Yahuang Zuzun's face. Chapter 4537, 4537 Leaving the mountain. Whoosh. A long white mark flew across the sky. Jian Wushuang's figure gradually turned into a small black dot and disappeared into the horizon. The sea that had calmed down washed the beach in waves, bringing up countless things like shells, gravel, and starfish, reflecting the blue sky. Fengtian Patriarch held the Chaos Wushu cauldron and stood with his hands behind his back. He looked at the sky calmly and did not come back to his senses for a long time. Behind him, the little Daoist had her head lowered, not saying anything. Chuji, do you think I've made a mistake all these years? Fengtian Patriarch suddenly said. There was no emotion in his voice, but it gave off a vague feeling of confusion. The little Daoist girl was stunned. She knew that her master had always been a very kind person. If it was an ordinary person who had their opportunity to advance snatched away by others, they would have long been irreconcilable with that person. However, her own master did not do so. He had also never harbored any thoughts of taking revenge on cosmos gods in the past. Master, why do you think so? The Daoist girl asked in a daze. Hearing this, Fengtian Patriarch smiled bitterly and said, in fact, in the last battle of the Great Catastrophe War, if I had to die, our divine power universe wouldn't have lost so many people. The little Daoist girl was still a little dazed. However, he knew that with his master's power, if he really attacked, not only would so many people in the divine universe not die, but it was even possible to reverse the situation. One must know that his own master was someone who came from the same era as the cosmos gods. Back then, he had even suppressed the cosmos gods. Even now, after the cosmos gods had reached that unspeakable realm, his master's strength was only one level lower than that of the cosmos gods. Forget it, you're still too young. You won't understand even if I tell you. Fengtian Patriarch shook his head, pursed his lips, and did not say anything else. Only he himself knew that he had trapped himself on South Sea Island for so many years because he had given up on himself and was unwilling to face reality. Suddenly, the Fengtian Patriarch let out a long breath and turned to look at the little Daoist, who was only as tall as his shoulders. He smiled and said, Shishi, how many years have you been with your master? The little Daoist boy was stunned. Although he didn't understand why his master would suddenly ask this, he felt that his master was a little strange today. 1,000,000 years. You've been with me on this island for 1,000,000 years. The Fengtian Patriarch sighed and suddenly said something that made the little Dao child's expression freeze. Chuji, do you want to go out and take a look? What I mean is to see the real vast galaxy, the boundless sea of stars, to see the true appearance of this world. The Daoist girl's eyes widened, and her breathing became a little hurried. Ever since she had been picked up by Fengtian Patriarch on the beach, she had never left this world. In the beginning, she would go to the mortal countries to play, make friends, and have fun. However, it did not take long for him to realize that mortals had life, old age, sickness, and death, and they had their own day and night. When she came out of her seclusion and happily went to find her former friends, they had long been dead and buried in graves, and the grass on their graves were 3 feet tall. A mortal's life was perhaps just a period of time for him to meditate. As time passed, he no longer went to the mortal countries to have fun. Otherwise, once there was a life and death separation, it would only add to her sadness. It could be said that she had spent almost all of the past 1 million years on the Southern Ocean Immortal Island with her master, Fengtian Patriarch. She could not wait to see the wonderful universe that his master had talked about. She wanted to see the brilliant sea of stars. However, she did not want to bring it up and put her master in a difficult position. She knew that her master, who looked carefree on the surface and seemed to not take anything to heart, had a knot in the depths of his heart. "I want to." After hesitating for a long time, the little Daoist girl took a deep breath and said the words firmly. After he finished speaking, she thought that her master would glare at her fiercely and then reprimand her. Therefore, she lowered her head and did not dare to look at her master's face. However, what she got in return was a carefree laugh that her master had never had before. "Good. My disciple, I'll take you to see what the universe really looks like." Fengtian Patriarch laughed heartily, carefreely, and uninhibited. He had never laughed so freely before. The light in his eyes brightened, and an extremely terrifying, overbearing intent emanated from his body. On this day, the Fengtian Patriarch finally found the courage to undo the knot in the depths of his heart. He was the #1 expert below Cosmos God. "Chuji, since you're going to the outside world, you can't wear this set of clothes. The girls in the outside world don't dress like you do." With a wave of his right hand, a purple silk dress with tassels appeared in his hand. "Go and change into this." "Ah!" The little Daoist girl was stunned for a moment. She took the dress from Fengtian Patriarch in a daze and ran into the bamboo house on the Southern Ocean Immortal Island. A moment later, a tall, slender, and curvaceous young lady in a long dress nervously clutched her dress as she timidly shuffled out of the bamboo house. She had bright eyes and white teeth, her skin was as white as snow, and her clear eyes were like clear water, extremely clear. The afterglow of the setting sun reflected on her face, reflecting a large patch of shyness. Her facial features were exquisite, her small face had a high nose, and her chin was sharp. There were many beauties in the universe, some cold, some enchanting, and some cold, but she had something that most women did not have. She was clean. The word clean seemed simple, but it was the rarest word. "Master, I am a little uncomfortable, so I'll change back to that Daoist robe." Chuji pinched the hem of her clothes, lowered her head, and said in a weak voice. She did not know why, but she felt that her heart was thumping and her palms were sweating. "Silly disciple, you're not allowed to switch back." Fengtian Patriarch glared at the youngling as he spoke in a threatening tone. He sighed in his heart. He was the only one who knew what he was going to do after leaving the Southern Ocean Immortal Island. After taking her to see the universe, he would also go and do something for this universe. Whether or not he would be able to return alive was unknown to the Fengtian Patriarch. Chuji did not know that this dress was an extremely powerful defensive immortal garment that Fengtian Patriarch had refined with all his supreme treasures. In terms of value, it was probably not much lower than a supreme ancestral weapon. This was a gift that the Fengtian Patriarch had made for her with his life savings. "My disciple, if Master is not here in the future, I will rely on this immortal robe to protect you," Fengtian Patriarch said silently in his heart. However, he raised his head and stretched out his hand, flicking Chuji's forehead. His tone was a little fierce as he said, "Silly disciple, if Master finds out that you dare to change out of these clothes, Master will peel off your skin." All right, I know. "Master, why are you so fierce?" Chuji rubbed her head where she had been flicked and mumbled in dissatisfaction. Fengtian Patriarch snorted and did not say anything else. Instead, he lowered his head and looked at the ground beneath his feet. His eyes were filled with reminiscence. "Old friend, you've accompanied this old man here for so many years. You must have been bored for a long time, right?" Bang! Fengtian Patriarch chuckled to himself as he stomped his right foot lightly. Rumble! In an instant, the entire Southern Ocean Immortal Island began to tremble violently. The seawater within a radius of 10,000 miles began to explode like boiling water. Boom, boom, boom. The ground cracked open and the sea boiled. It was as if a giant beast was awakening under the feet of the Fengtian patriarch. The next moment, bang! An earth-shattering boom erupted. The entire Southern Ocean Immortal Island was lifted into the air, and an extremely dull buzzing sound was heard. From afar, a black turtle emerged from the deep sea. "Master, this is..." Chuji's eyes flashed with a look of horror. She saw that under her feet was no longer the Southern Ocean Immortal Island, but a giant black turtle that was hundreds of thousands of feet wide. Its 4 limbs were like 4 ocean-stabilizing divine needles, pillars that held up the sky. And the Southern Ocean Immortal Island that she had lived on for 1,000,000 years was just a shell on the back of this giant turtle. The seething sea breeze ruffled the white hair on the sides of Fengtian Patriarch's face. However, the smile on his face grew wider. "Old fool, I've come out of seclusion. It's time to settle the score with you." "Oh, right, the alien races in the Void Universe, we have to deal with them first. I'll put aside the score with this old man for now and blast these B***stars out of our universe first." On this day, in the endless territories of the South Ocean starfield, countless mortals raised their heads and saw a giant turtle that covered the sky. Hundreds of millions of living beings knelt on the ground and looked at the giant turtle in the sky with fanatical eyes. They shouted in unison to bid farewell to the immortal. On this day, there was no more legend about the old immortal master in the South Ocean starfield. On this day, there was a strange combination in the universe. It was a giant turtle that was as big as a star. A disheveled old man and a beautiful purple-dressed girl were traveling around the universe. It was a strange combination. Oh, this old man forgot to ask. What's the name of the boy who played chess with this old man? I wonder if this boy has a Tao companion. It's time to find someone to entrust this young girl to. Shaking his head, this strange pair disappeared into the vast starry sky. And in the distant starry sky, Jian Wushuang, who was wearing a black robe and had a cold face, was already flying toward the off-world battlefield. Chapter 45-38. Inside the Lord's dormitory. Jian Wushuang nodded with satisfaction as he looked at the corpse of Tai Luo, who exudes a medium and supreme atmosphere. Today's Taro God corpse is not an exaggeration to say that it is the second avatar of Jian Wushuang. The strengthening of Taro God corpse's strength naturally equals the enhancement of Jian Wushuang's strength. This gave Jian Wushuang a little more confidence in the next battle. With a big wave of his hand, Jian Wushuang put the corpse of Tai Luo into the town's monument, and he was sitting in the center of the yin and yang gossip chart, and began to absorb the weak force. A large amount of virtual force was sucked into the body by Jian Wushuang, and then transformed through the virtual force crystal nucleus into the purest divine power. This makes Jian Wushuang feel helpless. In the early morning of the second day, Jian Wushuang held a morning meeting. This is the homework that must be done as the master of the line. The content of the morning meeting is very simple, that is, the elders report the situation of the sect, such as the recent major events in the universe, or the talented disciples in the sect, and there are recent signs of breakthrough. Generally speaking, it is a trivial matter. The same is true of today's morning meeting. After Jian Wushuang asked some regular questions, the elders retreated. On the throne, Jian Wushuang rubbed his brows, slightly tired. I have to say that the suzerain is still very tired. He must not only cultivate by himself, but also manage the tens of thousands of disciples in the suzerain. Metropolitan. When everyone was gone, the stature was fiery and charming, and his face was charming, and the 9 musk deer in a light red coat quietly moved away from the lotus step. He stood slenderly behind Jian body and stretched out his slender jade fingers. You have to squeeze Jian Wushuang's shoulders. As soon as her hands touched Jian Wushuang's shoulders, she saw that Jian Wushuang was shocked with electric shock. She suddenly stood up, raised her eyebrows and asked her coldly, "What are you doing?" "What?" Ju Mu was startled by Jian Wushuang's tone, and a look of panic flashed on her face. "Sovereign, I just watch you tired, and want to help you out." "No need to. Jian Wushuang said coldly. Sovereign, you didn't have to let your body take care of you a few days ago. Nine Musk stunned, then said with a blank expression. Just a few days ago, after the morning meeting, Jian Wushuang held her hand with a smile, letting her serve her well. For this reason, she also deliberately wore a more elegant red tulle today, and could dimly see the spring light in her red clothes, showing his good figure. Why does the Lord suddenly change his face today? This change of face, come too fast, right? Jian Wushuang heard a twitch of his mouth. Without having to think about his memory, he knew that it must be a ghost trick played by Tai Luo's corpse. No, this lord does not need a maid. Forcibly suppressing his temper, Jian Wushuang Yimenzi said, Nine Musk dear, from now on, you are no longer the servant of this lord, go back to Xiang Mountain, and practice. The practice is the root. Jusu heard that, she suddenly trembled and her face became a little white. Jian Wushuang's sentence, although it is more euphemistic, but to put it plainly, isn't it just driving her away? I understand. Nine Musk bit her lower lip tightly, nodded, and then left a little embarrassed. Jian Wushuang looked at the back of Joshan, shook his head slightly, then turned around, pressed the darkroom button of the Lord's dormitory, and stepped into the darkroom of the dormitory. Entering the hall, Jian Wushuang sat down directly on the yin and yang gossip array, and a large amount of virtual force rushed towards Jian Wushuang. Now that the battle between the virtual universe and the magical universe is about to start, he must seize every minute to improve his strength. At the same time, in the void crack, the 87th crack. It's like a hive in a palace group, in the middle palace. Flip-flop. A dull footstep came. 34 Xuanzuan strode into the hall. Return to Lord Void God, all cracks in the void have been investigated. On the throne of the hall, a low voice came out of the silkworm pupae. Anything. The words fell, and one of the 34 vaunted lords, who had eyes full of hands and vain lords without hands, stepped out and revived. Master Xingshan is wise. When we checked the 23rd crack, we found that the 23rd crack can lead to the divine universe. But unfortunately, the black-robed man who escaped into our universe, and not caught. The existence in the silkworm chrysalis seems to have long expected this answer, saying, this person does not need to worry about it. It is not the first time for us to reach our virtual universe. When the Holocaust begins, this person naturally will surface. After a moment of pause, a low, hoarse voice like a man and a woman sounded again in the silkworm pupae. That being the case, let the war of catastrophe start ahead. As soon as this remark came to an end, all the people in the hall changed their faces, and then their eyes filled with joy. Listen to Lord Shushan, is this? Lord Shushan has completely recovered. Click. Click. Without waiting for them to think about it, the silkworm pupa wrapped in layers of white silk split a crack. A trace of black mist like black ink spread through this crack. Click. 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 Immediately, there were more and more cracks. At last, an earth-shattering loud noise came out, and the entire silkworm pupae exploded. A tall figure shrouded in endless black mist slowly stood up inside the silkworm pupae. His body was shrouded in dark mist, and it was hard to see, except for a pair of scarlet demon eyes, showing the supreme, breathtaking breath. Under these eyes, heaven and earth must bow their heads, and the universe must boil for them. He is above all beings, sitting alone in the clouds, like a god, looking down at the world. Ill wait, meet Lord Shushan. Ill wait, see Lord Shushan. Suddenly, there were 34 false honors in the hall, including left and right dummy, all kneeling down. Whether they are the masters of a sacred place, or the immortal Taoism, or an extremely ancient existence, at this moment they are kneeling at the feet of this dark mist, and their eyes are extremely frantic. Xian Shen, the master of the entire Xian universe. No one dare to disobey his orders. He is the one who says nothing in the universe. The gods of the whole body shrouded in the dark mist, just glanced at them and stopped saying anything. His figure rose straight up into the air, as if the heavenly men were kneeling at his feet, holding him up. Hundreds of thousands of virtual periods, God of the earth, it's time we meet again. Shushan took up his hands and murmured to himself, his eyes seemed to penetrate the two universes directly, and saw the gods in the universe of divine power. Next moment, he pressed his right hand slightly down. Battle of Holocaust, let's begin. Chapter 4539. Cosmic Calendar, 6253. The Second Holocaust, which was called the Battle of the Heavens by later generations, began. On the same day, Shushan led the 32 virtual lords, left and right, through the 87th crack, into the magical universe. The world is shaking, countless clouds are surging, and the world seems to be in the middle of a winter night. The mountains and rivers are reversed, the sun and the moon are discolored, and even the stars are dim, and the voice of the meditation road comes from the sky, mysterious and mysterious. Except for some low-ranking virtual men who don't know what the situation is, those powerful people who have not reached the 87th crack are shocked. Their gazes turned to the place where the void was forbidden, their eyes flashed, and they mumbled to themselves, "The great world will start." Tianyaro Holy Land, Suspension Tower. The Suspension Tower was built in the deepest part of the Tianyaro Holy Land. No one can enter the Suspension Tower except for the contemporary Lord of Tianyaro Holy Land and the Tianyaro Shungzi, who has extra authority. Because the Suspension Tower is the place where the three ancestors of Tianyaro Holy Land slept. The reason why Tianyaro Holy Land is able to overpower the heroes and is called one of the Zeons in the virtual universe is because of the existence of these three Tianyaro ancestors. Each of the three ancestors of Tianyaro is an old monster who has survived from ancient times. In the realm of Liuhen Shuzuan, he has been soaked for countless years. The three of them usually slept in the Suspension Tower. Only when the Tianyaro Holy Land was facing the crisis of life and death would they go out. Nowadays, no one knows. Among the three ancestors of Tianyaro, at this moment, in addition to the third ancestor, they remain in the Suspension Tower. One of the four virtual respects. When they have led the people and set off the horn of the Battle of Catastrophe, and formally invaded the divine universe, at the top of the Suspension Tower, an old man wearing a blue robe and full of decaying ancient flavor, slowly opened his eyes. A sharp streamer flickered through his hazy eyes. Havoc has begun. This person is truly the third ancestor of Tianyaro Holy Land. I hope this war of catastrophes will not end so quickly. The old man has waited too long, and wants to play. The third murmured to himself, then closed his eyes again. This time of the Holocaust battle, the virtual can be said to have gathered the top combat power of the entire virtual universe, breaking the boat. However, Shushan did not let all the top combat powers gather in the void, but divided into several waves, changing constantly. If a strong person fell or was seriously injured in the front, let him retreat and replace it with another one. Like the third ancestor of the Tianyaro Holy Land, the Palace Master of the Hades, etc., is the reserve army responsible for the next few waves. At the same time, in another forbidden place in the virtual universe, the black mist and cloudy wind that has been eroded here all year round is the famous Jedi of the Void universe. Even if the trace-level virtual lord came to this forbidden area, the blast of the black wind that covered the black mist would leave no bones and fly grey annihilated. Therefore, the virtual universe has never dared to set foot on the discoloration of this forbidden place. However, the group of people at the highest peak of the virtual universe knows that this forbidden area is the most mysterious organization in the entire universe, where the organization is. At the moment, in the middle of the forbidden area, a bronze ancient coffin straddled the void and hovered quietly in the stars. This bronze coffin is full of ancient mysterious texture. A trace of black mist and overcast wind spread along the gap of this bronze coffin. If people see this scene, they will be astounded and shocked. The dark misty wind that is enough to make the dead bones of the trace-level virtual princes absent is actually just a bronze ancient coffin. Around this bronze ancient coffin, more than a dozen men and women in black clothes with strong breaths, sat quietly beside the bronze ancient coffin. If Jian Wushuang was here at the moment, he would suddenly find out that there are more than 10 men and women with strong breath, and some of them are the mysterious strong men who once chased and killed him in the 9 stars of the divine universe. When the virtual led many virtual lords and attacked the divine power universe, the more than 10 men and women sitting with their eyes closed and knees seemed to have some sense, and they also opened their eyes, giggle, is that guy from Xuanshan finally going to the divine universe? A charming woman with a ponytail in her hair and a black suit covering only her hips, with a huge breast on her left forehead, smiled loudly. Her name is Shasai, seemingly playful and cute, like a maiden of the house. In fact, the two cosmic people who died in her hands are more than the sum of all the disciples of Shunzong. Oh, the two universes have been calm for too long, and this time I watched a good show. Another tissue eater said with a smile. Soon, the more than 10 men in black talked in a low voice, and their faces were full of excitement and strangeness. There was no awe in the words, whether it was to the gods of the gods or the gods. During the discussion among the people, a lazy voice came out from the bronze ancient coffin. Byte 1, Byte 2, Byte 3, Byte 7, you go to the two universes and take a look. This sentence is plainly common, but the voice is full of charm, as if it has 10 million stresses, and it repeats in the ear. Yes, Lord. Hearing this person, from 1 to 7, all 7 stood up. Each of these 7 people has a powerful breath that cannot be said, and the man known as Devouring One is cultivated like a pit, like a prison, and even the 6-marked vanity in front of him is like a little witch seeing a big witch. Breath should be weak. Wearing a red mask on his face, only one eye was exposed, and there were actually 3 pupils in this eye. Go on. Like the strange sound waves of countless sounds coming out from the bronze weird. The next moment, from 1 to 7, a total of 7 people, starting from the position of their feet, continue to melt. After the 7 had left, the forbidden area gradually returned to peace, leaving only a bronze coffin with a muttering murmur. Xian Yi, these 2 universes of your choice will give you results soon. Come on now, the Emperor can't help it, you have to screw your head down. With the opening of the second Holocaust, the entire virtual universe was turbulent, and countless ancient powers that were retreating were all awakened. Jian Wushuang sat cross-legged in the Lord's palace of the Emperor Shenzong and opened his eyes sharply. What happened? Jian Wushuang's face changed, and then the whole person disappeared instantly, and when it appeared again, it was already above the height of the refining Shenzong. Jian Wushuang raised his head and looked towards the sky. Suddenly he saw something extraordinary, and his pupils shrank suddenly. Chapter 45-40. In the eyes of Jian Wushuang, countless gods flow. He could see the countless opportunities and fortunes of the void universe, all rushing towards the void. Is it possible that the battle of havoc has begun? Jian Wushuang's heart shook. Immediately afterwards, a message from the of the earth was connected to the sword unparalleled. Master God, has the war of catastrophes begun? Jian Wushuang took a deep breath and asked. Yes, the virtual has completely awakened and led the army of the virtual universe into the magical universe. The god of tone has never had a heavy tone. So, what should I do? Jian Wushuang asked. The god of the god groaned for a moment, and then said, swords are unparalleled. You must stop moving, wait until the people in the virtual universe completely relax their vigilance, and enter the magical universe. After that, the old man will contact you, and you will close Fengtian insert in the forbidden area of the void and block their way. At that time, your task is completed, the old man will do his best to kill them as much as possible. As soon as this voice came down, even if it was just a messenger, Jian Wushuang could feel the killing intention in the tone of Ju God. Silent for a while, Jian said without double emphasis, it is good. Although what Jian Wushuang wants to do now is to return to the extraterritorial battlefield to kill the quartet in order to express his depression, but he knows that what he is carrying is more important now. On the external battlefield, he can be one less sword unparalleled, and it will not affect the battle situation. But what he is going to do next will be able to settle the issue to a large extent, and thoroughly establish the life and death victory between the two universes. Well, Jian Wushuang, the situation is urgent, the old man will not tell you more, when you need to set up Fengtian banner, the old man will naturally contact you. After speaking, the of the sky hung up the news. Soon after the hang-up, the 5 elder elders such as Elder Moose, Elder Boss, and Elder Bian Shan, all stood up to the sky and stood next to Jian Wushuang. They looked up, and they all caught the invisible air machine that was constantly flowing towards the void. The elders, Dust Bone, Lan Yu, and Jin Ya all saw the excitement in their eyes. Elder Moose alone sighed softly. The catastrophe is about to happen. How we win, how we lose, we will all pay a painful price, and how hard it will be. After speaking, Elder Moose sighed softly. He is in the virtual universe, and it is rare that he is not the main faction. Jian Wushuang and Elder Banshan did not speak, and looked at each other. The two knew each other, a stop that would change the fate of the two universes. At the same time, leaving aside the extraterrestrial battlefield, the of the universe borrowed the list of Sword Unparalleled, and has already set up various coping schemes for the 34 virtual honors to fight with him. In the Divine Universe, because of the outbreak of the Holocaust War, the Divine Universe is the main battlefield. Therefore, the magnificence of the Divine Universe is almost several times more horrible than the virtual universe. On this day, the entire magical power of the universe roared, the road wailed, and the sky was grey, and it poured heavy rain. The heavy rain covered the world, covering the entire universe of divine power. Countless thunders exploded, and the silver snake danced like electricity. The entire divine power universe seems to be caught in the stormy end times. Countless monks stared into the sky in horror, exuding divine power but perceiving abnormalities, but no matter how they thought about it, they couldn't think of anything. And the top-level ancestral gates of the divine force universe, like Jodi Pavilion, Daewoo Temple, and Life Temple, all received the news of the cosmic god at the first time. As a result, those ancient powers that fell asleep awoke. Temple of Life. After tens of thousands of years of rest and recuperation, the Temple of Life finally took a breath. Not only that, the Supreme of Bloodwave also went a step further, breaking through the trance and breaking into a half-step invincible state of supremacy. In today's Life Shrine, it is regarded as the first person to be cultivated. The Great Axe is the original injury that has been completely recovered. It is like the reformed body. It becomes more powerful than before. If it is allowed to grow, it will not take long for it to break through the half-step invincible Supreme. In addition, the ordinary Supreme who had fallen the most in the battlefield of Life Shrine at that time has also made up a lot in these years. For example, the magic wind that once had conflicts with Jian Wushuang dominated the expectations a while ago. The breakthrough reached the elementary extreme. And, perhaps because of the same great vitality and busy recuperating in the Daewoo Temple, the Shrine of Life has poured a lot of fresh blood. Although there is no such perfect level of life as Jian Wushuang and King of the Ninth Calamity, the special life at the level of creation has broken through the number of hands. It can be expected that the future Shrine of Life will be full of vitality, and all kinds of rookie will emerge like bamboo shoots after a spring rain. By then, the Temple of Life will reach a new peak. At the same time as the Second War of the Holocaust broke out, the Supreme Masters, such as Bloodwave and Giant Axe, which were under negotiation, changed their faces, leaping out of shape, and came outside the empty hall. I saw 9 days, countless air blows, violent thunder constantly exploded, crackling booming, electric snakes shuttled and danced in the dark grey clouds, emitting incandescent electric light. The wind was like a giant beast, he growled, as if roaring in his ears. Bloodwave Supreme and others suddenly turned wild. Several of them were strong men who had participated in the Holocaust. Although they were still weak at the time, they played the role of waving flags in the Holocaust, but they were too familiar with this scene. This is precisely because of the collision between the laws of the two universes, the emergence of cosmic fluctuations, resulting in a scene. Big Axe, Heaven, you two are responsible for guarding the Temple of Life, so as not to trespass into the vein. I will take a look at the extraterritorial battlefield. Bloodwave Supreme took a deep breath, Shen said. The Supreme Axe and the Heavenly Supreme heard the words, looked at each other, and nodded solemnly. The battle of catastrophe is about the survival of the universe. If it is not for the Shrine of Life, it is necessary to send someone to guard it. Why don't they want to go to the extraterritorial battlefield? Okay, then I'll go. Bloodwave Supreme has a heavy expression. As soon as he steps on it, it will turn into a streamer. Before he rushed out, an ancient expanse, meanwhile, gently dragged him down. Next moment, a vicissitudes of voice sounded softly in their ears. Bloodwave, you also stay at the Temple of Life, the old man can go. Hearing this voice, the faces of the three supreme bloodwaves, the Great Axe Supreme, and the Heavenly Supreme were all mistaken for a moment, and then immediately a surge of joy appeared and looked back. Master Gav. Chapter 45-41. Master Gav. Supreme Bloodwomen, Great Axe Supreme, Heavenly Supreme, the three Chief Supremes all looked back. I saw an old man with an old spot on his face and turbid eyes, stepping out of the deep temple of life step by step. Hundreds of thousands of years of deep sleep, the rotten atmosphere of Gavu Supreme has become stronger, his body is dry, his eyes are deep, and his bones are emaciated. But his appearance, like the Ding-Haitian needle that calmed the storm, instantly calmed the three people who were impatient. From the time they joined the Shrine of Life, in fact, the years that the Supreme Lord Gavau spent with them far surpassed the master of the Shrine of Life. In their hearts, Gavro had long regarded him as an elder. Master Gav. Several people in Bloodwave Supreme walked in a few steps, reached out, and supported some of the wind-worn candles. Seeing this, Gava could not help but waved his hand with a smile, and said, "My husband is not old yet, so I want you to come to help." Bloodwave Supreme and others heard that the nose was sore. At that time, what kind of spirit of Supreme was against him, and as a result of the war of the Holocaust, several ancient six-marked virtual honors were slammed, resulting in serious injuries and destruction of life. Originally, if Gav Supreme retreated directly at the time, these injuries would have been over. However, at that time, the main news of the Palace of Life was that Gav Supreme could only suppress the injury, and stood out from the Palace of Life to guard the 100,000 chaos of the Palace of Life G, not subject to the crime of Chohao. Finally, it was even when the six-party forces besieged the Temple of Life that, for the sake of sword unparalleledness, they would fall into a deep sleep with their own bodies and fight against the dragons. It can be said that the Life Shrine Palace owner created the Life Shrine, but the person who really made the Life Shrine stand forever is the Gap Supreme. Gave Supreme paid his life for the Temple of Life. Let the entire Palace of Life revere. What about Jian Wushuang? Gava asked with a smile. Master Gao Fu, Jian Wushuang went to the extraterritorial battlefield nearly 10,000 years ago. Bloodwave Supreme replied. Oh. Isn't the extraterrestrial battlefield going only to the Supreme? This little guy has broken the Supreme. Gavari raised a brow lightly, wondering. Yes, after the end of the universe race, Jian Wushuang broke through the Supreme, and has swept through the six forces with his own strength. In addition to the Dragon and Daewoo temples still exist, other Big Sun Fuckingdom, etc. has all been destroyed. Bloodwave Supreme nodded and said. When it comes to Jian Wushuang, his face involuntarily pride. Sword unparalleled, is the Temple of Life he brought into. He is really proud of Jian Wushuang's current achievements. After hearing a few moments of silence, Gafu Supreme said a word. It is good. This word is very simple, but it is full of incomparable gratification, and the recognition of sword unparalleled. After speaking, Gafu Supreme lost his hand, looked up to the sky, and said to himself with a smile on his mouth, since then, the old man can be completely assured. As long as he survives this catastrophe, the Life Shrine will be led by the sword unparalleled, and it will definitely shine and heat, like the sky. The words of this sentence fell down, and no one noticed that there was already a trace of death in Gaze's eyes. His body, he knows the situation best. It has long been unable to return to the sky. And now, he only wants to use his own body to make the most brilliant blow for the magical universe. As soon as he stepped on, Gafu Supreme suddenly rose to the sky and blasted towards the extraterrestrial battlefield. Supreme Bloodwave, Great Axe, etc., looked at each other face to face, then sighed. At the same time, in the divine universe, the glacier is forbidden. This is where the patriarchs live. Glacier Forbidden Area, under a magnificent glacier. An old man with a naked torso, muscles knotted, and self-defeating, full of overbearingness, was sitting cross-legged. He seemed to be a furnace fireball, and the extremely cold glacier could not approach him for half a minute. The bitter cold had eroded before and was melted by the old man. Is that junk of alien universe jumping again? whispered from the mouth of the patriarch. Immediately, he slowly opened his eyes, and a blazing golden light burst out from his eyes. That fool's escape from the old man's life, this time, he couldn't escape. The shoulder trembled slightly. Click, click. In an instant, the manganese glacier, like a glass mirror that had died, began to crawl through cracks, and then shattered. A fierce and domineering figure, like the sun, soared into the sky, and flew towards the outer battlefield. A mortal planet in a lonely star field. The streets were bustling with countless mortals walking around. The door of an inn. An old beggar in ragged clothes, faintly visible is a star robe, leaning on the threshold of the inn, holding a dusty wine gourd in his hands, drinking with his head up, and half drunkenly groaned softly, 3,000 years old, what year is it tonight? The passers-by who passed by often looked at the wine lunatic with disgust and disgust. Even the young children, when they smelled the smell of wine on the old beggar, hurried away. Hey, you drunk old beggar, lie down and lie down, don't stop our family from doing business. The inn in the inn in the inn, covering his nose, kicked and kicked the old beggar. Hey, let's go, let's go. Laokia opened his dim and drunk eyes, glanced at the shop's xiao eye, grinned, and revealed a mouth missing a front tooth. Immediately, he stepped out and rushed into the sky for 9 days. This. Passers-by passing around, and the second-looking shop xiao their expressions were dull. Fairy. Suddenly, countless people fell on their knees and bowed their heads. And the old beggar stepped out the second step. Today, he re-enters the invincible supreme realm, in the heart of the universe. A sword mountain is suspended, under the gate of Jianshan Mountain, on a plaque, with gold hook and iron painting. The pen corner sharply writes 4 big characters. Starry Sword Sect. On this day, 13 flying swords came out of the mountain, like a flatboat, driving into the stars. On top of this flying sword, 13 strong men fluttered in clothes, showed the sword fairy style. And standing on the first flying sword, standing with his hands on his shoulders, stood a tall woman wearing a red scapular, with her hair curled up, stuck in a wooden hoe. She is Wu Zhenxian and the first person in the world of kendo. The sky is full of swordsmanship, and the starry sky is divided into 2 halves as if divided by the sea. This scene similar to the above is constantly happening in the divine universe. This day. Regardless of whether it is the supreme Gawar who awakened from his deep sleep, or the old beggar who asked the world with a drunk eye, and asked, what is the age of 3,000 years old? Supreme Wu Zhenxian. Their destination is the same place. That is, the extraterrestrial battlefield. Chapter 45-42. On this day, there was a turmoil in the universe. Hundreds of thousands of miles of cosmic starry sky. From time to time, among the major star domains, the legend of the immortal appears from time to time. These so-called immortals may not like to pull out gangs and form forces in weekdays, but like solo travelers, they travel in all directions in the universe, measure the earth with their feet, and perceive all minds with divine hearts. They usually don't care about everything in the universe, they are indifferent, but now, for the safety of the universe, they are all showing their true body and helping the extraterrestrial battlefield. Patriarch ancestors white apes, Laokia cucurbits, Emperor Ling Tian, star ancestors. One name used to be arbitrary and dominated the ancient power of an era. They have recovered, stepped out of the universe, step by step, and entered the extraterritorial battlefield. Beyond that, once the 3 hegemons of the universe, the dragon tribe headed by the scales, the unicorn tribe headed by the beasts, and the phoenix headed by birds, were among the 3 ancestors of their 3 tribes. The same strong ones stepped out and shocked the world. At the beginning of the universe, chaos had just opened, and the 3 dragon and phoenix unicorns fought for the identity of the cosmic hegemony. They suffered heavy casualties, and then the catastrophe war broke out again shortly afterwards. Following the fallen Fengzhu and King Kirin before, they also died in the Battle of Catastrophe. The 3 dragon and phoenix unicorns are completely declining, and each of them finds a forbidden retreat and rests. The of the universe then rose and won the Battle of Catastrophe, becoming the true master of the universe. Now, the War of Catastrophe is reopened. Even if the dragons, phoenixes, and unicorns no longer want to contribute, under the call of the gods of the universe, they have to pinch their noses and forcibly wake up a few sleeping ancestors in the clan and rush to the battlefield outside the territory. Countless ordinary monks who don't know the inside story, although they don't know what happened, they are also a puppet in their hearts. It's going to be another day. This is a brilliant world like never before. And at the moment, in the virtual universe, there are also countless powers to awaken and recover, but instead of rushing to the void for the first time like the divine universe, they wait quietly for the dispatch of the virtual god. At the same time, in the refining deities, the Lord's dormitory, Jian Wushuang and Banshan sat cross-legged. Jian Wushuang, what shall we do next? Elder Banshan asked with some concern. He spent tens of thousands of chaotic periods in the virtual universe, knowing the strength of the virtual universe. The top combat power of the virtual universe, if measured by the number of people, is not much more than the magic power universe, but according to the actual combat power, it is stronger than the magic power universe. For example, the zombie who dominated the universe while the virtual was asleep was no worse than the virtual god. What's more, there is a heterogeneous existence of the phage organization in the virtual universe. Hold your soldiers and wait for dispatch. Jian Wushuang's expression was flat and he said 8 words. Elder Banshan heard the words, and he couldn't help but hesitated, and said in amazement, let's do nothing? Yes, you can't stand the big picture. Jian Wushuang nodded. Before this second cataclysmic war broke out, he was nervous and uneasy. However, after this cataclysmic battle really broke out, Jian Wushuang found that his mood was calmed down instead. There is a saying for mortals that there is no room for 2 tigers, and there are fightings when there are rivers and lakes. This sentence is equally valid in the universe. From the moment the 2 universes were opened, the 2 universes were doomed to be in between, and would only end with a complete victory on one side. Okay. Ban Shan shook his head with a bitter smile. At the same time, he looked at the swordless sword of Wu Jing on his face, and he couldn't help expressing his emotions. The sword is so young without both sides, Shen Qi Kung Fu has reached such a deep level, the universe war broke out, and he can remain rational and calm and think freely. This made him feel a little bit ashamed. Jian Wushuang, then the old man will leave first. If there is any situation, please inform me the first time, and I will retreat first during this time. Banshan took a deep breath and said it is good. Jian Wushuang nodded his head. He knew that Banshan was not calm in his heart now, and he would not be able to maintain rational and calm thinking. Once he could not keep calm and rational thinking, it was only a matter of time to reveal the flaws. Therefore, it is currently the best practice for Banshan to choose retreat. After Banshan left, Jian Wushuang sat quietly on the seat with his knees crossed, his eyes blinking constantly. He knew that what he had to do now was only one word, and that was wait. Early this morning, he talked to Zhu Shen. Zeus told him that the battle between the 2 universes is not yet a confrontation, and they are still in the process of trial and friction with each other. Zeus does not intend to expose their strength and directly start a life and death duel with the virtual universe. Today's god of the earth is like a hunter who is carefully setting up a trap, constantly laying down on the virtual universe, waiting for the people of the virtual universe to fall into the trap step by step. After that, the sword Wushuang came to close the net. After pondering for a while, Jian Wushuang and Luo Ming, the head of the Red Whale Gang, obtained a message. Little Lord. Luo Ming's respectful voice came. He had been paying attention to the Forbidden Land in the past, and vaguely guessed about this catastrophe. It is estimated from this that the identity of Jian Wushuang naturally emerged. Although he understood in his heart, he didn't break it. From the moment Jian Wushuang planted a ban in the source of life that day, he knew that his life no longer belongs to this universe, or even to himself. Only belong to one person, that is Jian Wushuang. He will be under the sword warriors. The fiercest dog will only serve sword warriors. Okay. Jian Wushuang nodded his head, and then said, Luo Ming, from now on, all the gangs of the Red Whale will be reduced to 0 and all will be dispersed. They will withdraw from the top forces and the void, and the Red Whales should not exist. Only the core personnel who had been banned dived underground and changed their names. Now that the war of catastrophe has begun, at this critical juncture, Jian Wushuang must find a way to close all his tales. Dissolved. Luo Ming heard the words for a moment, then nodded without hesitation, and replied, Master, I see, what's the name of another name? Jian Wushuang thought about it, and now Luo Ming and others are playing his eyes and eyes in the virtual universe. That being the case, let us do this, you will call it left ear. Serve me for 10 million years. After 10 million years, I will lift the ban and return you to freedom. Jian Wushuang said faintly, presumably 10 million years later, the catastrophe between the two universes has ended, and then they will be free. It is good. Luo Ming raised her fist and was slightly agitated. Well, I'll contact you again if something happens. Jian Wushuang cut off the communication with Luo Ming, got up and walked out of the Lord's Hall, came to the railing, and could overlook the entire Lianshan zone. The sky became drowsy, snow falling from the sky, and the white snow covered the Lianshan zone. A snowflake fell on Jianshu's shoulder. Jian Wushuang tightened his lord's concubine tightly, looking at the dim sky, murmured to himself, the winter is here, and the night is coming. Chapter 45-43. Time passed and 3 days passed. For monks, 3 days is just a blink of an eye, but for today's virtual universe and divine universe, it is extremely slow. Although there are major top-level existences in the divine universe, and they went to battlefields outside the region to help the gods of the universe, but the gods of the universe did not choose to directly engage in a decisive battle with the virtual universe, but instead detoured backwards. The virtual universe is pressing harder and closer, compressing the living space of the gods such as the gods. At this moment, in the extraterrestrial battlefield of the divine universe, the voids of the void universe have camped and completely occupied them. A tent in the middle of the camp. Surrounded by endless black mist, the of innocence of physical appearance was sitting on a large chair. On his sides, there are left and right vanities, and under him are 34 vanities. They are negotiating the next battle plan. A vanity with countless tentacles walked in quickly from outside the camp, kneeling at the feet of the Shu, and said in a deep voice, Master Xian Shen, the people of the divine universe still do not face us, but retreat with one blow, and continue to shrink the line of defense. The virtual sat in the main seat and did not speak, but raised his head and narrowed his eyes, making it hard to understand what he was thinking. The right-hand messenger standing next to him was a thin-skinned old man wearing a shaman's hat. He heard the words softly and said, Master Xian, there must be demon in abnormal things. This magical universe does not confront us, but instead it is constantly backing away. I'm afraid that there is any conspiracy. As soon as this word came to an end, other virtual respects also frowned and said, Yes, Lord Shushan, this magical universe is obviously a strategy to seduce the enemy deeply. It is estimated that there is an ambush not far away. There was a lot of talk in the camp tent. Shushan gave them a faint glance, full of magical sounds, from his mouth. How about an ambush? What's the plan? It's just a matter of 10 minutes. After that, he shook his head and waved forward, Come down, and now see the people in the divine universe, no longer stay tempted and kill them directly. The people in the divine universe don't want to start a war with us, we will start a war with them. The initiative is never in their hands, but in our hands. The words were bland, but in the middle of the words, they were full of horror and domineering, not to put anything in their eyes. If you want 3,000 tricks and 100,000 calculations, I will try my best to drop 10 sessions. Strong crush. Divine power within the universe. The house was full of false men, and they all took the keel boat and slowly evacuated. The Jew stood on the deck of a keel boat, stood with his hands up, and looked up at the starry sky in the distance. There is a sense between the strong and the strong. He can sense that before the 100,000 virtual eras, the existence of the virtual universe was not far from him, looking at him from a distance. False god. His old enemy. Master Zeus, the people of the virtual universe, seem to notice that we are hanging them, and in the last few attacks, they no longer rush to kill. Captain of the 8th team, the Supreme Master 1111, who breathed Sanqing into the universe with supernatural power, stood beside the of the universe and said softly, In his eyes, there was a rush of worry. Just as the virtual said, their magical universe has laid out countless killing arrays of extermination in the base camp tens of thousands of miles away from the battlefield outside the territory. Each of these killing arrays is not only powerful, but also the god used the list of combat power given to him by the sword unparalleled. Each of them has a targeted restraint attribute. Once the people of the virtual universe enter, then what is waiting for them is a thunderstorm like a storm. Anyway, I understand the character of Shushan, who always advocates supremacy of strength and pushes invincibly. You can rest assured that he will not shrink back, but will increase the offensive. Zeus said with a smile. For this old enemy who has been entangled in 100,000 chaos ages, the of the universe has long been familiar with the virtual god. Not to mention, the countless killing battles are just a guise for the gods of the universe to attract their attention. The real killing trick is Jian Shuang's sword. As long as Jian Wushuang inserted the Feng Tianqi into the void, and cut off the back of the void universe, so that they could not get supplies, even if the countless killing battles did not work, he could slowly grind the alien dead. However, these plans did not tell anyone. Okay, I hope so. The 8th team captain Shishi took a deep breath and said. 3 days later. Master Zeus, as you expected, the virtual soldiers of the virtual universe launched a fierce attack. The 8th team captain Zun Shi hurried over and said with a look of excitement. In the case of countless killings, the current divine power universe is not afraid of the virtual universe being reckless, it is afraid of the virtual universe being careful. Now the virtual universe has launched a fierce onslaught, and they are chasing after them, just hitting them. Okay, don't fight with them, drag them into the battlefield. The god of the nod nodded, and then waved his hand to let Su Shi Supreme leave, and opened a communication with sword unparalleled. Refining Shenzong. The sword sat cross-legged and was practicing. Sword unparalleled. The words of the universe sounded in Jian Wushuang's mind. Jian Wushuang opened his eyes, and there was a flash of magic in his eyes. Sir Master, are you planning to start? Yes, the sword is unparalleled. You can now rush to the void and set up the sky banner. Zeus nodded, then took a deep breath, his expression became serious. Sword unparalleled, this time your mission is very important. You can only succeed and not fail. It is good. Jian Wushuang nodded, a flash of firmness flashed in his eyes. Even if you die here, you will not regret it. At last. The of Ju paused, his tone softened, and he said deeply, Jian Wushuang, after finishing this, come back alive, the old man is waiting for you in the universe. Jian Wushuang smiled at the words and said, relax, I will come back alive. Later, Jian Wushuang hung up the communication with the of the universe. The Lord's dormitory became quiet. Jian Wushuang got up and stood up, his eyes were as plain as water, and he stepped out of the sovereign hall. Some cold wind blows Jian Wushuang's black hair. It's windy. Jian Wushuang looked up at the sky and murmured to himself. Next moment, the sword unparalleled stepped out, already outside the astral area where the refining Godzong was located. Standing in the starry sky, Jian Wushuang has put on a wide black robe. He glanced down at the refining Shenzong, and realized in his heart that he would never come here again. Goodbye. Shaking his head, Jian Wushuang reached out to pull on the wide hood that was attached to the black robe, and pulled down the hood's brim to reveal only one chin. Swordless twins turned into a thunder, blasting towards the void. The recent plot is the biggest climax and the most important part of the Top of the Universe. It is related to the end of the Top of the Universe volume, so it takes more time and effort. In order to achieve the best results, constantly scrutinizing the plot, resulting in late updates every day, I apologize to everyone. I will find time later to make up for it. Chapter 45-44. The Vast Universe of Stars. A figure was bursting towards the Void Forbidden. Refining Shenzong is not far from the Void Forbidden ground, so it doesn't take long for Jian Wushuang to reach the Void. When it came to the Void, it was much tougher than the previous defense. There are traces of vanity everywhere, guarding the entrances. These levels of virtual respect are not high, and most of them are second and third marks. They were drawn by the elders of the top sects, and they were unable to participate in the Holocaust and were responsible for guarding the void. Who is coming? A scolding sound came, and a middle-aged man with a shining light in his eyes and a halo of avenues appeared on his back, staring at Jian Wushuang. Sir, this is Luo Ming. Jian Wushuang smiled slightly, reached down and pushed down the hood on his head, exposing a face exactly like Luo Ming. At the same time, a faint glow passed across the Ethereum token on his waist, making his breath impenetrable. Luo Ming? The middle-aged man sitting cross-legged, suppressing the entrance, raised his eyebrows. He had heard the name Luo Ming. It is the infamous red whale leader in the universe, who has always made a living by killing homes. Although his strength is not weak, his reputation in the universe is not good. He often does things that are deceptive and hard-working. In the eyes of this middle-aged man, Luo Ming is just a small character who can't get on the stage. What did this guy come here all of a sudden? Shaking his head, the middle-aged man's mouth appeared to be ridiculous, playing with taste. Luo Ming, you are not staying with your red whale gang, why come here? There are no people you can rob. Jian Wushuang heard the words, and glared at him with a pretense of annoyance, and snorted, What the are you talking about? Is this the only thing you can do that doesn't work? Ha ha ha, I assent it. The middle-aged man grinned narrowly, and the taunt on his face was even stronger. Well, Luo Ming, this is not where you should come. Wherever you come from, go back. He waved his hand, and the middle-aged man said impatiently that he wanted to send the sword Wushuang to leave. Go away, what are you? This void is forbidden to open your house. If you let me go, just leave. Jian Wushuang glared at the middle-aged man, and said something viciously. Long before entering the forbidden area of the void, Jian Wushuang had already figured out his plan, which was fake Luo Ming. This person, Luo Ming, has a good reputation in the virtual universe, but because of his status, he doesn't have many friends he really knows. In addition, Luo Ming's impression to the public is that the image of the unreliable Demon King, even if he did something extraordinary, in the eyes of everyone, it is reasonable and consistent with his personality. These are the labels on Luo Ming. Therefore, this is the most suitable identity for Jian Wushuang to enter the void. As for the risk of breaking in too much, if not until the last moment, Jian Wushuang does not want to do so. You guy, you really have a bad breath. The middle-aged man changed his face slightly when he heard the words, and there was a coldness in his eyes. This seat lets you leave. This is not where you should come. Don't you understand? While talking, the middle-aged man stood up while standing. The mighty coercion belonging to the four-level virtual respect emanated from him. Although he cultivates the same realm as Luo Ming, he is confident that he, who is from the front door, is definitely not the same as Luo Ming. If Luo Ming dare to say a word, he doesn't mind teaching the infamous red whale the big head. What? You want to fight? Jian Wushuang sneered and looked at the middle-aged man without fear. With the status of Luo Ming, Jian Wushuang has no worries about his seemingly insane performance, which will cause any doubt. Court death. The middle-aged man flashed coldly in his eyes and said coldly, Luo Ming, you usually do anything wrong, even if you don't cause a major event, now dare to challenge this seat. Do you think this seat is your usual soft persimmon? Wow tilde. A black bone knife was pulled out of the body by a middle-aged man. A surge of imaginary force burst from him. Jian Wushuang looked at this scene, his pupils shrunk slightly, but his face did not change at all, stepped out, and stared directly at the middle-aged man. The eyes of the two men collided in the air, hitting countless invisible sparks. Pinpoint to Mei Mang. Just when the two were about to start, an unexpected voice suddenly came from a distance. Luo Ming, why are you here? Immediately afterwards, he saw an old man in a red robe. After seeing Jian Wushuang, he first looked at him, and then a happy expression came out on his face, and he quickly greeted him. Ah, Lord Blackknife, Luo Ming, why are you two on the bar? When the old man in the red robe approached, he saw that the atmosphere between Jian Wushuang and the middle-aged man was not right, and his heart suddenly made a bad noise. He and Luo Ming are best friends, and he knows Luo Ming's temperament best. I'm afraid it's my friend who caused something. With a bitter smile in his heart, The old man in the red robe immediately became a peacemaker. The middle-aged man obviously also knew the old man in the red robe. He snorted coldly, and his face was still not very good. Red Buddha, if you ask this person, shut your mouth and let the seat get out of the way. I don't kill him, it's already a good temper. Jian Wushuang heard the thoughts in his mind, and the old man in the red robe was afraid of being the real Luo Ming. He was one of the few friends in the universe. When the meeting still has to find a chance, ask Luo Ming to find out the situation of the old man in the red robe, otherwise it is very likely to reveal stuffing. There are many thoughts in his heart, but on the surface, Jian Wushuang stared at him, pretending to be angry. Red Buddha, this guy let me go away first. This guy is just a gatekeeper. If he is really of false gods, everyone is in the same realm. Why did he order me? Luo Ming, what is the gatekeeper? This seat is the last line of defense for Lord Shushan. You must not talk nonsense. The middle-aged man's anger came again. You really put gold on your face. Jian Wushuang disdain sneered whispered. Between these two words, Jian Wushuang and this middle-aged man have another rhythm that they want to fight. Seeing this, the old man in the red robe only felt that the first two were big, and he couldn't help but stop the unstoppable Jian Wushuang, and smiled bitterly. Well, give me a face, just a few words. The words fell, and the old man in the red robe saw that the two had slightly tempered their tempers and stopped, and he could not help but sigh of relief, then turned to look at Jian Wushuang and asked, Yes, Luo Ming, why did you come here suddenly? He remembered that Luo Ming did not know about the Holocaust. Chapter 45-45. Things of the Holocaust. In the divine universe, it is a secret that only spreads in the top combat power, and the same is true in the virtual universe. In theory, with Luo Ming's strength, he is qualified to know the Holocaust, but Luo Ming's popularity is too poor, and he has always been at odds with those top ancestors who know the news. Therefore, no one will naturally tell him. The old man in red robes knows this. Therefore, he was also quite surprised how Luo Ming knew about the Holocaust. In this regard, of course, Jian Wushuang's heart already has the answer. When I saw his eyebrows raised, he deliberately made a careless look and poked his lips and said, Why? Only you know. There are so many children in the Red Whale Gang, and I have already told this to him. The old man in the red robe heard the words and nodded bitterly with a smile. Although the Red Whale Gang are some shrimp soldiers and crabs, few of them can play a major role, but there are indeed many personnel. It is not difficult to inquire about a piece of news. Luo Ming, tens of millions of years have gone. You still speak with a gun and a stick. The old man in the red robe said with emotion. Before waiting for Wushuang's answer, the middle-aged man, Black Sword Lord, sneered and replied, What do you know? What do you want to do when you know it? Do you want to succeed or not to participate in the Holocaust? Jian Wushuang also replied with a sneer, It is not up to you to decide whether or not to participate in this catastrophe. This seat sees that you are a dog and a mouse, and you are nosy. You. His Majesty the Black Knife heard the words, and immediately became extremely angry. When the old man in the red robe saw that they were in a position to quarrel again, he quickly said, Well, be quiet. Jian Wushuang and His Majesty the Black Knife stared at each other, then hummed at the same time and stopped talking. Taking a deep breath, the old man in the red robe said, Now when I wait for the use of the virtual universe, Luo Ming's decision to participate in the Holocaust is not up to you or me. You are here a little wait. Let me first ask the 8 desolate lords who are responsible for guarding the camp this time. After that, the old man in the red robe took a look at them and strode into the void forbidden area. After the old man in the red robe left, Jian Wushuang's mind relaxed slightly. Now that the acting is done, there is no need to go on, just wait quietly for the result. Therefore, he closed his eyes slightly, eyes and noses and hearts, and turned a blind eye to the spitting fire of His Holiness. The void in the forbidden area, the 87th crack, has been completely blocked. It's like a hive. Among the dense palaces, there is a side hall with a few oil lamps. Although the first main forces of the virtual universe have all followed the gods of the universe, they have broken into the magical universe. However, there is still a strong man who is responsible for suppressing the base camp in case of emergency. A middle-aged man in a white robe sat cross-legged on a futon and practiced quietly. Behind him, the endless corpse gas emerged automatically, forming a scene of corpses and blood. He is the 8th Desolate Emperor, the last sovereign of the refining god sect, and the one responsible for staying in the camp this time. Badaman. The old man in the red robe walked in quickly, and firstly whispered respectfully. Don't look at the 8 Desolate worship ranked lower than the 34 deity worship. That's because these 34 deity worship are all recovering from the ancient peak of the strong, but for those who do not enter the 6 marks, 8 Desolation still has great prestige. Red Buddha, what's the matter? Huang Shuzuan slowly opened his eyes and looked at the old man in the red robe. His tone was kind. Although the old man in the red robe did not enter the 6 marks, in the realm of the 5 marks, he had been immersed in tens of thousands of virtual disciplines. As far as the practice time is concerned, it is far longer than the 8 Desolate respect. However, along the way, we don't use strength to determine strength and strength. Let's go back to the 8 wastelands. Red Whale helps Luo Ming to vote, and wants to play a part in this catastrophe. The old man in the red robe said with respect. Luo Ming? But the star robber who is famous in the universe. Huang Shuzuan asked slightly. Yes, this is the man. Lord Yaohuang, this Luo Ming has known me for hundreds of times. Although sometimes the mentality is bad, but the strength is not weak, and the nature is not bad. The old man in the red robe said. Is that so? Huang Shuzuan touched his chin, then smiled and said, The Red Buddha, you decide for yourself, let him see where there are cracks to be guarded, then send him to guard. For Huang Shuzuan, it is not a big deal to arrange a Luo Ming, and the old man in the red robe just said that he and Luo Ming were good, so let him give him a favor. Yes. The old man in the red robe was a little happy, and grateful Chao Shenxian honored his hand. In this hidden battle of the void universe, countless people have called it the Battle of Gods. Because once this battle is won, it will be rewarded by the Lord God. This is a rare opportunity. Luo Ming is one of his best friends, and the old man in the red robe naturally hopes that this friend can also share such an opportunity. After arching back, the old man in red robe returned to the void outside the forbidden area. Luo Ming, come with me, Lord Badan has agreed to your request. I'll take you to familiarize yourself with the void forbidden area first, and then find a weak defense to get you on top. The old man in red robe said with a smile. Ha ha ha, Red Buddha, how are you? Jian Wushuang laughed loudly, and didn't say any polite words, but reached out his hand and struck the old man in the red robe heavily. Although he did not know the real relationship between Luo Ming and the Red Buddha, the relationship would not be bad if he wanted to come. If he spoke some polite words, it would be abnormal. Gladly glancing at the scary middle-aged man with a dark face, Jian Wushuang followed the old man in the red robe and strode into the void. The villain Deji, the middle-aged man, snorted with a bitter hatred, and then sat down again, closed his eyes, and started practicing. No one found that Jian Wushuang, who was closely following the old man in the red robe, opened a faint smile on the corner of his mouth. A small black flag slipped from his cuff, inserted into the void, then disappeared and disappeared. Only Jian Wushuang can sense that all the nearby voids have been suppressed by Feng Tianqi. As long as Jian Wushuang's thoughts move, that Feng Tianqi can be fully urged to block everything and form a Jedi. Luo Ming, let me familiarize you with the Forbidden Land first, and tell you by the way, what is the situation of this catastrophe. The old man in the red robe walked ahead and said. Jian Wushuang originally had this intention. At this moment, when he heard the old man in the red robe said this, his heart moved and he nodded. It is good. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories,